Hello, New Zealanders. Thursday night, we are back. In fact, we sort of skipped last week because there was some big event in the US going on, and everyone wanted to watch that. To my left, but not always on the left, is Simon O'Connor. That joke never gets old. How are you, Simon?
I am doing very well. I was sorry I was not able to join you last Thursday, actually, to watch all those results coming in.
Yeah, well, we might touch on that briefly, but look, there is a whole lot of, we have been flat out trying to sort out all the breaking news that's been going on just in the last hour, including Parliament basically being closed down because of the treaties bill. We're also going to talk about the latest polling that has come out, just fresh off the press about a couple of hours ago. So that's going to be interesting. Is the government getting a hiding in the polls because of all this negative media coverage in the hikoi? What else are we talking about, Simon? We're talking about boot camps.
We should talk about this, Bob. There's something sort of new that's.
Yeah, that's a point. I might just have a drink out of my cup. Cheers.
Mugs for mugs.
Yeah, there's 4 mugs on your screen right now, team. If you'd like to make comment, go to our Facebook page, the Family First Facebook page. Let us know that you're watching, and also give us your comments on what we are talking about. There's going to be a lot to comment on. Or go to our YouTube channel and you can make comment there. Look, we're going to get straight into it, and basically there has been the first reading of the treaty bill in Parliament this afternoon. There has been a hikoi making its way down from the top of the country. In fact, we caught up with Willie Jackson, Labour MP, walking across the Auckland Harbour Bridge. Simon, I did sort of think to myself, I've always wanted to walk across the Auckland Harbour Bridge. You've run across it, haven't you?
I have. I've run across it several times. In fact, two weekends ago, Rachel, myself, and the youngest did the half marathon.
Wow. Okay, you're just trying to impress me. Well, I thought I could have walked across as part of the hikoi, and I sort of wasn't thinking ahead. But Willie Jackson was walking across, and he made a little video of himself, and I actually thought he may have revealed actually what this whole thing is about. Have a watch.
Well, we're swinging on the bridge. Yes, we're going to get rid of this government. The useless coalition government. How many people? Look, at least 8,000 here. Of all races, Māori, Pākehā, Indians, ethnic minorities, they all hate the government. Well done, toi treaty.
Yeah, okay, so I'm wondering whether he sort of gave it away that actually it's not about a bill specifically, it's actually simply about they hate the government, it's an anti-government march. Is there some truth to that, do you think? Do you think he's actually let the cat out of the bag?
Oh, there's a lot of truth to it. You can see even, first and foremost, I should say, I'm no problem with hikoi and protest. Peaceful protest is all very good and important. But I think one of the striking things is if you actually talk to Willie Jackson or any of the organisers or participants, they couldn't actually tell you what they want. And I'm not trying to be stupid here, Bob, but actually they're not telling you what they want. They're just complaining about the government. They're complaining that there's even this bill, that there's even a discussion. And you can see from what Willie said, it's just hating on the government, everything they're doing. Another rhetoric you're seeing come through social media from supporters of the hikoi, it's everything from economics to welfare to Palestine and every other issue in between. So really, and unfortunately, I think, for those who are trying to make a point about the Treaty Principles Bill, it's getting lost in just the usual, melee of topics. And I think ordinary New Zealanders can see that.
Okay, let's just have a look at some of the comments. I've had to load these pretty quick, so hopefully they all work. This was just the opening comments that David Seymour made about 2 hours ago. And this is what he said.
Even people who are convinced this bill will not become law are determined to stop it being discussed, and that's why you hear so much outspoken criticism of it. They know that whether or not this bill becomes law in this term of Parliament, it's only a matter of time before its logic prevails. That's why they say kill the bill, because they can't kill the idea behind the.
Yeah, and I think he's probably getting some good traction about that and saying, okay, you're saying kill the bill, but why don't you read the bill? Why don't we debate the bill? Prove that it's wrong by debate. There is some strength to that argument, even if you disagree with it, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, the irony is this is meant to be about the Parliament. This is meant to be about debating ideas. There's a select committee process. If you are a great supporter of the bill, you can submit. If you think it's the worst, most divisive thing, you can make a submission. But the irony, and sad irony, if not, to be honest with you, Bob, the hypocrisy, is you've got a lot, particularly of the people on the hikoi at the moment, the Willie Jacksons, some of these KCs who are writing in, those church leaders a few weeks back, all very happy to give their opinion. Again, not very clear on what it is, other than we shouldn't debate it. But they're happy to speak, and they're trying to stop others from doing so. And sad to say, you've even got it from the Prime Minister, who says there's nothing good in the bill, I don't want to talk about it. It's like, well, last time I checked, you're meant to be a member of Parliament, which means you're there to represent and listen to the variety of views.
Yeah. Okay, there were some interesting comments made during the debate. Gordon, could you just fix up 42 with Willie Jackson? I need to show that, but it's sort of all out of kilter. Let me just show you what couple of the other comments were.
When you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. That, Mr. Speaker, is what is behind this bill. Its architect tells us that this is about equality, but we do not have equality in this country. Pick almost any statistic that you like. Housing, incarceration, health, life expectancy. Māori get unfair and unequal outcomes because of unfair and unequal treatment, which started with the Crown's intentional, violent actions to dishonour Te Tiriti o Waitangi.
You know, when they talk about violent actions to dishonour the Treaty of Waitangi, do they lose some of the audience?
Well, they do, because, I mean, look, she's a communist. Let's put that on the record straight there. It's classic revolutionary talk. Two, it's very much cherry picking. Chloe could go and look at the stats of suicide rates. She'll find it's actually young white men, but that's inconvenient to her. And then if you're going to start cherry picking history, well, again, it's wrong. Was there violence from the Crown? Of course there was. But there was violence on all sides. And not all ways. So it's very much cherry picking. The other thing I might quickly note, Bob, is of course there's Chloe Swarbuck trying to save us all and wearing her big tiki there and speaking on behalf of Māori. And this is a woman who's not Māori herself, has sacked one of her Maori MPs, Darlene Tana, got rid of one of the Pacifica MPs, Elizabeth Kirikiri, and didn't stand up for her Persian or Iranian refugee MP, Golriz Garaman. So she's a little bit duplicitous. There we go. Let's get a big, bold word out there.
Okay, that's
Thursday.
a big one.
So
I'll get out
Chloe
my...
talks a big... Yeah.
I'll get out my Roger Thesaurus on that one. But it's very good point. Absolutely very good point. Willie Jackson got into the House and he actually got thrown out of the House, and this is why. Oh, let me just... There we go.
To you, David Seymour. You fuel hatred and misinformation in this country. You bring out the worst in New Zealanders. You should be ashamed of yourself, and you are a liar.
Okay, so he was chucked out of the House for that statement. Please explain to the viewers why he was chucked out. Because he wouldn't apologise.
So it's the word liar. So there are a few, not many, but there's a few words that you cannot say of another member of the House, and that's to call them a liar. You can't call a member of the House a coward, for example. The whole point being that members are meant to be honourable, and it's there to try and keep an element of decorum in the House. And if people can, even just take a step back from your thoughts of politics, if MPs are starting to call each other liars and cowards and sort of yelling abuse like that, it's just going to descend into chaos. And so it's banned. And normally you have to withdraw and apologise, which he refused to do because, as you've seen already, it's all about stunts today. They're just there to... It's exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay, well, we'll come to the theatre. Just before we do, one more thoughtful piece. It was from New Zealand First, and it's interesting what she says.
Our leader, the Right Honourable Winston Peters, has referred often to the great Māori leaders who forged the path for a better New Zealand. Sir Aparana Ngata, Sir Peter Buck, Sir Maui Pomari, Sir James Carroll. They all shared the position that there were no principles to the treaty, and that will remain New Zealand First position.
Okay, so that is basically their argument. Now, it did go all to custard in the Parliament, and it started with Te Pāti Māori, who sort of revealed, I think, exactly what the agenda is, and I don't think a lot of people maybe supporting the bill realise that this is the agenda.
We've been talking about Pākehā honouring Te Tiriti o Waitangi, expecting solutions to come from the very house that attacks us every single day. So the real question we now need to ask ourselves at Te Iwi Māori is, when will we honour Te Tiriti o Waitangi? Article 1 gave consent to Pākehā to govern over themselves. They've assumed governance over us. When will we begin to assume governance ourselves? Te Pāti Māori is the only party committed to establishing our own whare rangatira. E aho. E aho. Our role as Te Pāti Māori is not to be a part of this system, but to create our own.
That's not a new argument, is it? It's a separate parliament. It's apartheid, is it?
Oh, look, absolutely. They can wrap it up however they want, but look, put it really, really simply. They're radical revolutionaries, and they ultimately believe that separate systems are going to help them. And the Rawiri Waitatis sort of think of themselves as feudal lords. And you might go, what? And what I'm saying by that is they really just think that they own everything, and they should just be able to sit back and have whatever their governance is, while all the rest of us pay for it and do all the work. Because be under no illusions, he is more than happy to be in the New Zealand Parliament, clipping the ticket, taking all the money. But with their new separate system, they're not going to pay for it. He's not going to pay for it. As I say, like a feudal lord, he's going to expect everybody else to do all the work, all the hard lifting, and all the paying.
Okay, well, you probably heard on the news that basically Parliament was closed down for a little bit. They suspended the House, and it was because this happened.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
There we go.
E ono ngā pōti e whakahe.
Kawana! Hawhakamanu whiriti a koe au! Kamate, kamate,
The House is suspended until the ringing of the bells. The gallery is to be cleared.
Okay, have you seen that happen before in the House, Simon?
I have seen little instances of it, and it usually is coming from the radical left. I mean, look, let's be really clear, and I used the word hypocrite earlier. That's what the Māori Party is, and that MP who started her haka, because there's a tikanga or a process in our parliament, and they disrespect and trod all over it. And as the clip was ending too, those MPs were moving towards David Seymour. Regardless of what you think of him, MPs do not approach one another in that effectively threatening way. So we just have to do the very quick thought experiment. If that was David Seymour or Chris Luxon or anyone on a marae who decided to just start, I don't know, singing and dancing in the middle of a karakia or a waiata is a song, all hell would break loose. You imagine going to Waitangi Day, Bob, and then just starting ranting in the middle of the service. You'd probably be literally lynched. But this is, again, the radical activism of the likes of the Māori Party, and it's very dangerous because they believe they are above everybody else. They are above the laws of the land. They're above the tikanga or the protocols of the parliament. They're dangerous. But this is salient. This is a really important lesson for everybody in New Zealand watching. This is the sort of country they want with them in control. Disrespectful, arrogant, and divisive.
Now, it's interesting. I was watching the media coverage just before we came on here, and they were saying that Jerry Brownlee, the Speaker of the House, had lost control because I actually clipped it just to show what the outcome of the haka was. what they aren't showing you is that Jerry Brownlee, in respect to the haka, the protest, allowed it to complete itself. And then he suspended the House. And I thought that was really interesting. It's almost like saying, well, you can punch me in the face, and once you finish punching me in the face, then we'll blow the whistle on this game. And it was a kind of a level of respect that I thought Jerry Brownlee showed that wasn't being shown by the other side. But you won't hear that in the media. You'll hear the narrative that Jerry Brownlee lost control. I just want to tell you he didn't. I just clipped that just to shorten it for the benefit of the show. But in fact, he showed the respect that I don't think the other side aren't showing. But the other side seemed to get away with not showing respect. And like I said, they get away with it. That's the problem, isn't it? It's probably not the first time you've seen it.
Yeah, it's not the first time I've seen it. But look, anything to do with the treaty or anything linked to the Māori Party, clearly staged and organised. They were told to behave or to respect the protocols of the House every time they give the Parliament and effectively the people of New Zealand the giant middle finger. But actually we've seen before, I know in the euthanasia debates, people were removed for having a wrong T-shirt on. In other words, this is it's very culturally Marxist at the end of the day without sounding too academic. It's pick and choose the topic. So if you're here talking about the treaty or Māori rights or the environment, you can pretty much get away with murder. But come in and discuss abortion or euthanasia, or you want to discuss other issues, you will be kicked out of that parliament quicker than the door can hit you on your backside. And so it's a problem. And wait, I would say, Bob, for fawning mainstream media coverage of this tonight, of how the powerful Maori MP did a haka and challenged the government. I mean, ridiculous.
Well, there has been fawning media coverage, and I guess that's probably why we're talking about it, because everybody is talking about it, everybody knows about it. Look, in fairness, just before we do leave this topic, I do want to give the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, the chance to explain why they're supporting it in first reading, but they're not going to take it any further. So he's just gone overseas. Actually, I did want to ask you, Simon, is that very good timing that they have done the first reading when Christopher Luxon has been scheduled to be out of the country, you think?
I don't think it is. It's a short-term win in his mind, but I think a long-term loss. And what I mean by that is this is deliberate. He's deliberately making sure he's not there. Now, to be fair on him, he's going to APEC. That's been in the diary a long, long time. But the government decides when readings come up for the first, second, third reading. So they've deliberately chosen the timing. But I think, unfortunately, it just shows him running away from the issue. I don't think it's going to serve him in the longer term.
Okay, well, just before he left the country, he was asked why they're not supporting it past first reading and probably why he was supporting it at first reading. Here's his response.
Look, I mean, there'll be a process through the Select Committee process for people on all sides of the debate around the Treaty Principles Bill to express their concerns. From a National Party point of view, as I've said before, we don't agree with this bill, and we don't agree with it for a number of reasons. The first thing is that, treaty issues are complex, and we have built up over 184 years, you do not go negate with a single stroke of a pen 184 years of debate and discussion with a bill that I think is very simplistic. We think our approach as a National Party is a much better one, which is that we actually engage on those issues, issue by issue, case by case, and we work it through together. And that's been the history of what we have done between the Crown and Māori over 184 years. And importantly for our government, we're focused on improving outcomes for Māori, and that's where Māori want to have higher incomes, Māori want to have less crime, Māori want to make sure they have better educational opportunities, access to timely healthcare. So, that's why, yes, we're supporting it to first reading, but beyond that, we're not supporting it for those reasons.
So the point I want to just run by you, Simon, is that National say that they are not changing anything in this area, that there's been this long period of agreement, but the thing is that there's been a huge opposition to the government, and it's been primarily led by National because they're the majority party, because they have specifically done things which have wound up the Māori and argued that some of the treatment is negative treatment. I mean, I've just got a quick list here. They've disestablished the Māori Health Authority. They've changed to changes to Māori language use in public health departments. They have defunded the cultural reports for justice. They have removed 7AA from the Children and Young Persons Wellbeing Act, so that cultural factor. They've done the fast-track bill, so Māori think that's going to run roughshod over some of their concerns. And they're restoring balance to the New Zealand Histories curriculum. So you could argue that what ACT and David Seymour are asking for in this bill, National has already been doing through their policies. Is that a fair argument?
Look, I think it is. It's interesting that Luxon doesn't go that way. I mean, look, he is clearly uncomfortable being on any other side than supporting the treaty, in fact, in a similar way to what Labour and the Māori Party are in terms of just agree it's a partnership and move forward. So his messages are mixed. He's clearly deeply uncomfortable with it. Personally, I'm very uncomfortable with his, we're not going to vote for it, but you can all come to Parliament and tell us your views. I mean, why bother at one level? I mean, again, the whole point of being an MP, and he is an MP, just because he's Prime Minister doesn't take away from that fundamental point, is to listen. And if you look at the polls, the National Party members overwhelmingly support the bill. A number of the MPs support the bill, but he's clearly whipped it in a particular way. But there is, it cuts both ways with your point, Bob. At one level, they have made enormous changes and actually pushed back a lot of the treaty in New Zealand. Therefore, if they're doing it anyway, why bother with ACT's bill? But you can look at it the other way too, to go, well, if you're already pushing back on various curriculum and Māori representation, then why would you not support the bill? So again, it's sort of it's a confused area, and I think it's one of the reasons he keeps getting a lot of opprobrium or attacks from media and others. Yeah.
Okay, I was just trying to find the data that I had for the breakdown of the bill. It's still about 2-1 in support of the bill, but there's still a big chunk of people that are unsure as well, and maybe because that's part of the narrative. All right, as you can imagine, the comments have been going, there's sort of burning smell coming out of the machine just here. Let's just check. Monica says, I'm going to join the hikoi holding a sign saying Dame Whina Cooper says the womb is tapu. Very good. Nancy Margaret says, I don't want democracy and debate. They want it their way. What I dislike the most is the total lack of respect for anyone who disagrees with them. Our PM is a disgrace to his party. Justine says, what can Pākehā do that Maori can't? They can go to school, have healthcare, get uni fees paid that whites can't. Rosie says, when I was a student at Taupo Nuiatea College in the Taupo from 1990 to 1994, if you were Māori and you could prove your whakapapa and what marae you belonged to, you got money to stay in school. Robin says, seeing all the young ones in the hikoi in Hamilton today is such a worry. Karen says Mr. Brownlee needs to show and take control of Parliament. And Nancy Margaret says, sorry, Bob, just shows weakness. I'm afraid that's in relation to Jerry Brownlee's response. Look, I think credit to Jerry Brownlee. He allowed a protest to finish because he knew that it wouldn't be that long. But I guess you could argue he should have told the MPs to behave, but it was out of control by then. I mean, would you have dealt with it any different if you were the Speaker of the House?
I think from what I've seen, oh, we're locked up.
Your screen's locked up. Okay, I'll just keep going while you unlock your screen because I do want to just give some other breaking news, and that is that a latest poll has just come out, and Simon's just going to figure out what's wrong with his screen, and we'll get that sorted. There is a latest poll from Courier Market Research. It is hot off the press. It has just been released. And here it is, and you're going to see Simon trying to fix his computer while he does this. But this is, oh, hang on. No, it's this one. Here is the latest Courier Market Research poll, and the blue line at the top is National. They have gone up 3.9%, and they have got Labour has gone up 1.5%. So both the major parties have increased, and the minor parties have decreased. And then if you look at preferred Prime Minister, there's been a slight drop in National and a slight drop in Luxon, and a slight drop in Hipkins, so they're not doing too well. You're back in, Simon. Welcome back. Did you see that, Simon? Did you see that that both National and Labour had increased, and all the other minor parties had decreased? A little bit of an increase in the yellow line there, which is ACT. National and Prime Minister Luxon. I mean, he's not that popular, Luxon, is he? He's sort of, if you looked at that graph, you'd be a little bit worried. And then Hipkins should be worried. They'll replace him soon, won't they? And just before you comment,
so, yeah.
Oh, go on. Let me just show you one more, Simon, just before I get you to comment. This is an interesting one. Let me enlarge it. Top issues that voters are concerned about. So the biggest ones are down the bottom: cost of living, economy, health, law and order, education. Finally, we get to the treaty, but the treaty is less than half of cost of living and just over half of economy. So that actually suggests that some of the issues that the media are exercised about are not actually the issues that the general voter are exercised about. Anyway, do you want to comment on that graph now that you're back on the land of the living? Didn't you pay your power bill or your fibre bill?
I'm becoming a bit worried. This is the second time in as many days that the system, and it's not our system, it's been, I was on Zoom with another call, it just gone bink and disappeared. So I'm going to have to look at some of my settings. But no, look, working backwards, the issues, look, it's no surprise that it's the economy, law and order, health, education. I mean, this was the same as the American elections. So people can talk about all sorts of issues. And the mainstream media do, and certainly the left. But actually, what really matters to people is the likes of the economy. Personally, I think the treaty's too high on that one. I mean, polls are polls. But, anecdotally, I get people opining on the treaty principles bill, but, it's not really that top topic. But it probably reflects the sensitivity of the time. Look, I think National will still be worried at its polling. As we've said before, Bob, they just cannot break 40%. And to be honest, I can't explain why it's popped up. I'm pleased it has with my own political bias, but I can't quite explain why. But it does look like the smaller parties, be it New Zealand First, ACT, Greens, have hemorrhaged a bit of vote. And yeah, they will be worried about the preferred prime ministerialship. I mean, look, at the end of the day, he's not popular. And, general political wisdom is that you are at your zenith, at your height, when you start. And we're we're over a year in now, and it's not looking too good. But I'm still with you. I think Hipkins' days are numbered. I will once again, just to annoy you, mention that you've got to keep an eye on Arena Williams. She could be one of the contenders. Not supporting her.
She thinks a woman has a penis. She's not going to be leader. Oh, well, maybe she's going to be leader, but she won't be Prime Minister.
That's a valid point.
Okay, right. Anyway, that's the latest on that. Look, I did just see a comment coming through for you. Ricky says a 3-pound hammer normally works a treat, Simon. That's on your laptop that was playing up. And Fine Weather says, dashing in black today, Bob. It suits everyone. So there we go. There's a little bit of encouragement. Right. Speaking of encouragement, we just want to check that Trump has been congratulated by our leading politicians, and world leaders have been been a little bit embarrassed. I mean, Sir Keir Starmer sends over a whole lot of MPs to campaign for the Democrats, and now he's got to work with Trump in the UK. That's not going to go down too well, but there have been some comments that have been made even from our side. Christopher Luxon, just before he became leader, when did he become leader of the National Party? Was it 2021? Straight after
Oh, God, now you put me... It was before
must be
the
21
election.
After. Yeah, before the last one that he won. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I think it was a year after because you lost in 2020 and then you replaced the leader. So it's 2021 must be, surely. Sound right?
Probably. I'm not trying to be stupid. I genuinely don't remember. Partly it was so traumatic because we had Simon Bridges, who was then rolled by Todd Muller, who lasted, 50-something days. Then Judith, who disgraced herself. And then we ended up with Luxon. I was just waiting for a few more scandals to become the leader myself.
Yeah. No, it was 2023. Oh, no, Leader of the Opposition from 2021 to 2023. So, yeah, there we are. So I was right. Okay, I'll take that. I was right. Thank you very much. Anyway, this is what Christopher Luxon said just before he was appointed Leader of the Opposition.
Christopher Luxon, who identifies as an evangelical Christian, and it's like this, huge bullseye target that's been painted on your back. And why is that? Why have people been reacting so much against your variety of Christianity?
Yeah, well, I have a real issue with it, really, to be honest, because I think, and I really don't like the labels, and I've actually reacted quite badly to the word evangelical, because I kind of, to be honest, there's also been, the so-called evangelicals, I think, have tripped up too, and they've been trying to force or bend society to their will, and I think, sadly, some of that's going to come down the wrong side of history. And if I just give you an example at the moment, which I find, quite frustrating when I hear that term, it's just, none of President Trump's so-called behaviour or evangelical support has been speaking out, I think, on enough around the cruel and dehumanising language he's using, or the bullying manner in which he's going about it. And I think
Okay, so those comments aren't probably going to go down too well. I mean, that was when Trump had just been defeated, and so in 2021 he thought he was safe that he could say that. Now it's changed. David Seymour also wasn't too complimentary about Trump. This is back in 2020.
Insane and irresponsible. That's how some medical experts describe Donald Trump leaving hospital to drive past supporters in an SUV. A doctor at the hospital where Trump's being treated for COVID says the Secret Service agents inside that car were at serious risk and must quarantine for 14 days. Meanwhile, Trump could be discharged later today.
I think maybe the problem is no one's explained to him that super spreader is a bad thing. Sort of sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You do a good Trump, David. You'd be able to do his...
We're going to do the best spreading, the best. We're all going to be perfectly spread, and you're going to like it. A lot of people are going to like our spreading.
What do you make of him with catching COVID and his response?
Oh, look, just when you thought 2020 couldn't get any weirder, it's like some sort of children's fairy tale where people kind of get their comeuppance, I suppose.
Is that going to be Googled by the Secret Service before Trump makes contact with us?
This stuff won't be forgotten. Let's not over-egg this, but actually the comments of Luxon, who of course is the PM, by the time Trump's really engaging with New Zealand, Seymour will be the Deputy Prime Minister. They will have dossiers, understandably, on all of this. But by the way, New Zealand's got dossiers on Americans as well. I mean, it's not a surprise, but this doesn't age well, and I think you summed it up really right at the start, Bob, which is a lot of these guys, doesn't matter if it's Luxon or Seymour or Kevin Rudd in Australia, or David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary in the UK, they all thought Trump was gone.
Yep.
They've slammed him. It's going to come back to bite them to various degrees. I don't think Trump's going to be ruminating in the White House about what Chris Luxon thought, but it will colour Trump's approach and judgment of him and New Zealand, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue on. Let's get on to maybe a slightly lighter topic, but we're going to talk about whether our under 16-year-olds should be banned on social media. That is TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Australia has or is introducing a law to ban them and say it's in their best interests. This is a bit of coverage from One News.
All 6 Australian states and territories today uniting on a promise to protect children from the dangers of social media.
This one's for the mums and dads. Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it.
A complete ban for those under 16 in a bid to protect them from harm.
I want Australian parents and families to know that the government has your back.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's big move follows the death of 12-year-old Sydney schoolgirl Charlotte O'Brien, who took her own life just 8 weeks ago after relentless bullying.
Hi, I'm going to my Year 6 farewell tonight, and I just want to say thank you.
Her final plea for help left in a note after receiving a social media message while she was alone in her bedroom. Her parents, Matt and Kelly, carried her ashes in a teddy bear to Canberra.
This is Charlotte.
Delivering a direct message to the government, this is what can happen when social media goes unchecked.
she was in charge in life, and she's still very much in charge now. She's giving us directions every day.
This onus will be on the platforms.
While the proposal has gained cross-party support, there are concerns about how effective it will be, with some experts arguing it delays exposure and fails to teach children how to be safe online. But Charlotte's parents welcomed the move.
There is no question in my mind that it's the right decision. This will save lives of our kids.
And while it comes too late for their daughter, they hope it will come just in time for other at-risk children around the country.
Okay, that's pretty tough to watch, and you would certainly say that it might be justified to have this ban if it can work. Luxon was asked about his view of it.
Some interest in that idea, actually, just with respect to what we've seen with respect to cyberbullying in particular in New Zealand, and we've seen some real advantage of the cell phone ban across the schools, but that's something that, frankly, our Cabinet hasn't discussed in detail, but it's something that I'd be open.
Okay, so he's open to it. Simon, do you think we can ban it, or is the cat out of the bag, or is there another option?
I think the cat is out of the bag, and I think there are other options, which is, if you will, far more cultural, Bob, in that, look, I actually don't support the ban. I think what Albanese is doing won't work practically, and I'm also worried about the level of governmental control that's going to be required to implement this. So people just need to think about how are people going to be able to identify who is 16 and younger, and that's ultimately going to be a lot of governmental controls of you identifying who you are and your age and a whole lot of other details. And that makes me nervous, not just for the under 16-year-olds per se, but for society at large, of governments that like to get more and more controlling. I think that the better way, rather than rules and regulations, is how do you bring about a cultural change? What is it that's leading particularly young people to bully other young people? What's leading to that addictive cycle around social media? How do we empower parents to have better conversations with their young ones and so forth? So that's my own very brief take on it.
Although you would have been at the forum when we had Jonathan Haidt. I mean, he was quite adamant that he thinks we need to ban social media. Was it smartphones from until age 14 and social media until 16? And, he presented all that research. There has been a lot of impetus because of what he's been saying. I agree with you. I'm not quite sure how they're going to do it, whether the age verification or that whole kind of online proving who you are can be extended to adults. Where are they going to draw the line? And is the cat already out of the bag? And should we actually be putting more pressure back on the likes of TikTok, Instagram and Facebook to show some responsibility and stop targeting our kids with ads and the algorithms that are trying to deliberately hook them in? Can we expect the companies to act responsibly?
Look, I don't think we can. We can certainly ask them. I think there's probably more merit in addressing the nature of their content and how they market it rather than an age verification system. I definitely do not disagree. Oh, there's a very double negative in a sentence. I definitely don't disagree with Jonathan Haidt. I mean, the research is very, very clear. His research, what he said at the forum, was absolutely spot on. I'd like to, if you will, tease it out a bit more with him, and when he talked about a community response. Because I would lean more into, can we as parents, adults, collectively decide how our young ones might operate versus, again, the hand of government. And it's that latter part which makes me nervous. But coming back to that phrase, the cat's out of the bag. I mean, you can try. I mean, how many parents we've tried to put filters and the like around our networks, not just for content, but to stop, the young ones being on all hours of the day and night. They're clever, Bob. They get they get around this in a heartbeat. And they'll do the same with whatever Albanese's trying to cook up in Australia.
Yeah. Okay. It was going to be our polling question, and maybe we'll just put it up there. And if you'd like to make a comment on it, you can come through the Family First Facebook page or YouTube comments and just tell us, do you think we should ban social media for under 16-year-olds? I think most people acknowledge that it is problematic. Kids are being addicted. They're having phone-based childhoods rather than play-based childhoods. But is it something that the community and parents come together on? Simon, that was the difficulty, is that every child seems to have a smartphone. So when your child doesn't have one, there's huge peer pressure on them. There's peer pressure on the parents. And also schools weren't helping because they were saying you had to have the technology to do all the the work in schools as well. So there is that community buy-in. We all need to come together on this rather than just say, oh, we're just going to ban it and it'll go away.
I think you've actually nailed some of the solutions right there. When you said the community buy-in, I refer to it as cultural. It's actually parents overall saying, you know what, we won't give our kids cell phones. And parents drive a lot of it. The number of parents I've come across, oh no, I have to give my 8-year-old a cell phone in case something goes wrong. It's like, well, what on earth is firstly going to go wrong, and B, there's surely other means for an 8-year-old to communicate. But the other is, just the pressure. It's not just about even having phones, Bob. They've got to have the right type of phone. I mean, the bullying of young ones because they've got an old iPhone versus a new. So this is a response to a consumerist culture. And that's the sort of thing I think we can push back on.
Okay, this was an interesting comment. I'd be keen just to get your response to this. Andrea says, I wish parents would stop letting their children have unrestricted access on social media. Literal 12-year-olds are accessing trashy content and for massive amounts of time. Now, that is true, but part of the problem is that a lot of parents, as you alluded to, the kids are more savvy at getting around the issues than actually the parents are. And so parents don't know how to do the restrictions, or how to put those, what do you call it, the vetting or the censorship in place. Yeah, the filters, yeah. So, I mean, that's a fair point, isn't it?
Oh, it's really, really challenging. And you nailed one of the key drivers, and I don't know how we get around this, but our young ones learn on devices at school, and they come home and do their homework, not with quill and papyrus, but they're coming and using laptops. And it's very, very difficult to work out, are they doing their homework, or if you know your keyboard shortcuts, Alt-Tab changes the screen within a microsecond, and they switch between their games or their YouTubes. It's immensely, immensely difficult. I suppose, and I better be clear, I don't see myself as any expert in this space. It's been challenging. But it's lots of conversations with them, the young ones, around what they're watching, why, the behaviours and so forth. Okay, so our question is, if you want to give us a quick answer, should we ban social media for under 8-year-olds? I still think it's very difficult. There's a lot of peer pressure both on parents and on kids. Simon, I am still hugely disappointed with the high up, the sort of more senior teaching professionals, that it took a politician, Christopher Luxon, to ban cell phones in schools, and it was never called for by most teaching unions or principals. In fact, some of them were kicking and screaming against it, and yet it turned out to be a very, very good idea, which I think we all knew. I still think it's to the shame of some of those in the teaching profession that they weren't the loudest voices calling for the ban, because they would have seen the evidence of the problem every day with kids in the classroom and in the playground. I mean, I heard some teachers after the ban saying, oh, the kids are actually outside playing with a ball and actually having some fun rather than just sitting looking down at their phones. So why weren't they calling for changes? Why did it take Luxon to make that call? Because the teacher unions are complete political ideologues, and they're completely captured by wokery. So it doesn't matter, Bob, if it's cell phone in schools or an approach to the Treaty of Waitangi or trans issues. The unions are completely complicit in all of that. And I'd make a really important distinction between those unions and teachers at large, because I think most teachers are very welcoming of the cell phone ban. But unfortunately, those who actively work to get part of the union and get elected are completely corrupted on all of this. And I don't think we can say much more than that. They're just completely corrupted by it all. Yeah. Oh man, I'm just trying to find an image that you will be interested in. No, it's not that one. It was just, it was from the Hikoi, and it was showing the, actually, Gordon, you might just have to help me here. I just want to show this image, 96. So this is number 96. It's Hikoi 2. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So that's at the that was at the Hikoi. That's the NZEI is the, what is that? That's the Primary Teachers Union, and that's the LGBTQ flag, and they're at a Hikoi talking about the treaty. So that's a pretty political flag there, isn't it?
Yeah, and the key point for people to understand is, New Zealanders are allowed to have opinions on all these things, but the Teachers' Council makes a big thing of how they're professionals and they're politically neutral and they're not allowed to, promote particular causes. We all know that's completely false because they do promote big causes, and we know as of yesterday, certainly in Auckland, actually that's not true. Across the country, schools are promoting and encouraging their students to attend these protests in the same way they encourage their students on the school climate strikes. If your child wanted to attend the March for Life on December 7th, or the Forum on the Family, I think it's August next year, hell would freeze over before they allowed that. They are completely and utterly politically compromised, and parents need to be aware of this.
Yeah. Okay, we are fast running out of time because you've been doing so much talking, so I'm just going to jump.
I'll fault my system again. I'll freeze it all up and then you can shut down the show.
Well, there's a topic I think you would be interested to talk about, and that is the fact that Pharmac is going to fund, the state is going to fund at-home testing kits to make sure that your pregnancy termination has been successful. So are you telling me that they're going to fund these checks for chemical abortions unsupervised and make sure that you have killed the unborn child, but they aren't funding certain cancers and other conditions? Is that what you're telling me, Simon?
Well, that's exactly what Pharmac's doing, and there's at least two problems with this. The first, before we get on to their funding decisions, is a clear indication that at-home chemical abortions are risky. And look, you know as well as I do, we're very strongly pro-life, don't agree with it. But if they're going to be funding chemical abortions, you'd probably think medical supervision's a good idea. But unfortunately, Pharmac, amongst others, believes that it's perfectly acceptable to take a dangerous course of drugs to kill your child. But they're admitting through this, Bob, that it is dangerous, that there are problems, and hence they need these testing kits. The second element, of course, is that there are so many people out there demanding drugs for the likes of cancers and other terrible illnesses. The rare disorders group have been fighting for years for even just a little bit more funding, and nothing. Pharmac has decided abortion is the way to go, and I think it's just quite disgraceful, really, but it's probably a reflection of who's on their board and others making this decision, again, captured by politics. And maybe they should take a bit of a warning out of what happened in America recently.
Yep. Yes, quite right. Just one other quick topic that we'll cover is that the bill, the Fair Digital News Bargaining Bill, this is a very nice image actually, thanks to the Taxpayers Union, but basically National seems to have run for cover on this. They're not going to stop people linking from Google through to news sites. I still can't figure this one out, Simon. I cannot figure out why news corporations, all our news media, don't want Google operating because of the, if I want to find some news, where am I going to go? I'm going to Google it, and then that's going to point me to certain news outlets. So why are the news outlets why do they want this bill? Is it just the money thing?
There's at least two drivers why they want it. To be slightly fair on the mainstream media, there are, if you will, websites that, if you will, take their work and news and then present it on their own. Right. And so it is, I don't know if it's particularly Google, but, it's taking their content and using it for sort of summary feeds. And there are a lot of people too, we know in the research now, a lot of people just read headlines. In other words, people will see the New Zealand Herald article or the TV1 article on the Google search, read the headline and the very quick summary and not follow through. But the wider dynamic's true as well. It's I would argue almost symbiotic. People use search engines to get to the news sites, and news sites are relying on that. So ultimately, this is just a grab for money off the big tech giants. And I've got no love for the Googles and Instagrams and all of that, but it's just a monetary grab, a greedy monetary grab, and it's going to fail, which I'm pleased about. I just think it was a bad bill. I was very disappointed that National even flirted with running with it. Okay, and people are just reminding me that don't always use Google. There's Yahoo, there's Bing, there's DuckDuckGo. What's your one that you normally use, Simon? I'm lazy. There we go. I've said it on air. I'm lazy. I use Google because it's just convenient for me. So I am aware like DuckDuckGo is much better for more secure searches. But I'm happy to also say on air I'm not really researching that much controversial stuff. Yeah, right. All right. Yes. Just before we go, we're just going to do a quick check on Substack. Just before that, I'm just going to have a drink out of my political playback cup. Nice. Bit of advertising there. Right. Tell us on Substack, you wrote an article entitled Democracy Being Left Behind. Oh, that's good. Left Behind. There's a book and a movie on that. What's this about? Look, long and short, the progressive left always tell you the great threat to democracy is Donald Trump, and I just go through a few examples to say actually it is the left which is much more problematic. You know, they label and bully anyone who doesn't vote them. They've turned to the courts to weaponize against their opponents. Think of the Department of Justice, Bob, in the United States that targeted pro-lifers. I point out how mainstream media falsifies the news. So, roaring headlines about Elon Musk's money without pointing out that Kamala Harris raised 3 times as much money. So I'm just going through basically if there is a domestic threat to democracy, it's from the left. Okay, I did a Substack. The New Zealand media were defeated by the US election. In other words, they, like the international media, they told so many porkies that people weren't listening and Trump still won. Actually, and it just shows you how the mainstream media has responded and confirmed their bias, including some New Zealand clips as well. Actually, I just want to go back to your one here, and I've circled down the bottom there, Simon. It says upgrade to paid. I didn't realise I was paying you by looking at your Substack articles. What's going on there? How much do you get paid? My Substack is completely free, but get this, there are some wonderful people who voluntarily pledge money. So people, really? There are actually I'll tell you how many offline, but actually a goodly number of people. That's impressive. Actually, I know they give me money. Maybe it's to shut up. I don't know. But no, people can actually pay. But it's free. For everyone to know, it's free. I don't expect you to pay, but some very generous people, they like. Oh, that's very nice. Are people not paying? Are people not giving you money, Bob? Oh, I couldn't charge. Far out. They want me to pay them to read it. Speaking of that, you also did one called He's Back. What's that on? So that was last week's just very, very quick impressions of the American election, and was just pointing out that really Trump and the Republicans focused on the issues that mattered. In many ways, actually, it echoed the taxpayer union poll you showed earlier about New Zealand, the economy, education, health and safety, health, law and order. Whereas, Kamala Harris talked down to people, was inauthentic, and talked about issues that just were not relevant. So really it's just dissecting what happened in the election. Okay, and one other that I did was I just analysed that trans and pregnant documentary on TV on Monday night, and what I actually showed was that what happened was that a woman gave birth and everything reaffirmed biology, ovulation, carrying the child. We even had scans of a 13-week-old in the womb. It was just a celebration of life, biology, and everything good. And my point was that biology still conquers ideology. Simon, we didn't do half our topics, but that's okay because there was a lot to cover and there's a lot of breaking news, and it's just about 6 o'clock, so we better get out of here or nobody will watch. Thank you, Simon. You'll be back on, maybe Monday night. I need to check the roster, and Tuesday morning for your usual solid ground with your very own cup. I know. I'll have to switch. I'll have to switch this cup out for the solid ground cup and for the straight talk cup. It's going to get quite confusing, but They're great mugs.
Thank you.
So thanks to Susanna.
Speaking of mugs, here's my McBlog one. So there we go. Anyway, we are out of time. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, and we will see you back next Thursday night at 5 o'clock. Good night.